Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Theresa Alexander-Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. Today, my guest is Dr. Leonaura Rhodes. She is a physician who turned brain health expert and now coaches parents and also coaches parents with neurodiverse children. So get ready for an exciting and enlightening talk with Dr. Rhodes. Welcome.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being here and spending your time with us and sharing your wisdom.
I hope to share some wisdom.
Oh, I am confident that you will. So why did you go from physician to brain health coach?
That's a very good question. It was actually a physical move across a large ocean. I was a developmental pediatrician in the UK, and so I was diagnosing and treating children on the autism spectrum, ADHD, learning disability, Down syndrome. And 16 years ago, my husband announced that we were moving to America, and I said yes before I found out that I couldn't work here as a physician. And so, so we did the move, and I very quickly had to kind of reinvent myself. I had previously run a coaching program for parents of children on the spectrum during a career break in England. And so when we moved here, I wanted to be useful. I'd worked with that community a lot already. And so I decided to train to be a neurofeedback therapist, which is a therapy I no longer do, but it was, it was really useful and really interesting. And I combined it with doing neurofeedback on the children and coaching the parents. So that was 15 years ago. I set up that business in the States. And so that's what I've been doing off and on for the last 16 years. I had a break where I went to work as a medical writer. I designed courses for Harvard Health, one on brain health, and there's a theme here. And I also worked for Tony Robbins, the world famous life coach. I worked for him for 18 months as one of his results coaches and trainers. Interestingly, when I worked for him, I worked with medical professionals. I was the only doctor on the team, and so ended up with working with a lot of medical professionals then. And I left Robbins in 2021 and started coaching parents again. And so in that time, I've coached thousands of parents with children with all sorts of neurodiversity. In fact, the biggest group has been parents of dyslexic children, but of course, a lot of them also have other neurodiversity as well as a lot of autism spectrum, and there's a ton of kids with ADHD. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. That's a lot.
Yes.
To your skill set, which is awesome. Yes. And exactly why you're here to have this conversation. Yeah. Now, what exactly does a brain health coach do?
Very good question. So I'm trained by Daniel Amen, who is a neuropsychiatrist, and he has a program to train people like me to be coaches and trainers. And so, as you heard from my brief bio, I've always been pretty obsessed with brain health. It's really fascinated me. When I was a developmental pediatrician, it just stunned me how different people's brains work so incredibly differently. We kind of think it's this organ that works pretty much the same. And then when you work with, with children on the spectrum, especially, you see that, people's brains work incredibly differently. And that always really, really fascinated me. So to do some kind of official brain health training was really important to me. I wanted to kind of understand what was going on at a brain health level more deeply. And what I've come to learn over these various trainings that I've done in neurofeedback and then brain health coaching is that because the brain is the operating system for your mind, for your behavior, ultimately for your whole life, we really need to focus on optimizing our brain health as much as possible. And especially for neurodivergent children, and even more especially for children on the autism spectrum, because they have very sensitive brains. Everybody's brain is sensitive, but children who are on the spectrum have even more sensitive brains. So, dietary changes, exercise, sleep, noise, things like that have a bigger impact on children on the spectrum than they do on your average child. And so when I work with parents, I tell them all of what I've just told you. And I say that it's really important to have brain health as the primary focus, because no matter what therapy you do, if the brain is unhealthy or inflamed or just not working very well, the therapy is not going to work as well as if you've optimized brain health. Does that make sense?
Oh gosh, absolutely. So then what are some of the things? So I'm going to ask you, what is your most popular strategy when parents come to you? What is the thing that you tell them the most often? Like what do you stress?
Yes. So I have this 4-step process that I take them through. And so I get them to write down, and people who are listening can do this as well. I want you to write down 4 boxes going across the page, big enough to write one word in each box. Okay, so we're going to end up with a little train going across the page. In the very right-hand box, write the word success. This is what we want to be aiming for. And when it comes to children on the spectrum, we want to be optimizing their potential as much as possible. And I use those words very specifically because for some children, their full potential is being able to get themselves dressed in the morning and maybe go to a residential school, and that is what they're capable of. Maybe they'll be able to to have a job at some stage or do some volunteering. And then there are other people on the spectrum who their potential is to get a master's degree and go on and have an incredible career. So, we need to be bearing that in mind. Every person has a different level of success that is attainable for them. Does that make sense?
It does. And it makes me think just like the greater population, right? There are people who want to be, street sweepers as opposed to, rocket scientists. So there, like you said, it's a spectrum, and people will operate within not only their strengths, but whatever they choose to, because we know the brain, there's a lot of neuroplasticity that goes on. So it's possible to teach people more, but some people just want, I just rather be. Right?
And it's really interesting. I also work with people who are very high achievers, kind of CEOs and C-suite executives, and I have to tell them sometimes, not everybody is as ambitious as you. Not everybody wants the top job. Some people are really happy to have, a lower level job, get really, really good at it, and they're happy doing that for the rest of their life. And that's okay. We need people like that. So, I think that definition of success is really important. And sometimes as parents, I've experienced this. I have 2 young adult sons. I've experienced this with my kids. You have to be realistic about that, and you have to, allow your child to be involved in the success that you're heading for. They might not want what you want for them. So yes, so success is, it's really important to define success. Then the next box over is strategy. So strategy is the how-to. And this is where some of the therapies might fall in, although they might fall into the two first boxes as well, but it's the how-to. So for example, I was just listening to your podcast with an occupational therapist. So occupational therapy is a strategy to improve fine motor skills, to improve, sensory perception, to help a child function better in the world. And it's a really, really good strategy. So that's a strategy piece. And you might get, you might have tutoring, you might do ABA therapy. Those are all strategies, and they're amazing. The next box over is story. So story is the mindset stuff. When it comes to a parent and a child, there's two people's mindset at play. There's the parent and the child. The parent, it's what do you believe about yourself and your ability to help your child? What do you believe about your child's life? What do you believe they're capable of? How do you see them? What's your identity? And then, of course, for your child, hugely important what their mindset is. In this dyslexia program that I work in, I would say at least a third of the parents, when I ask them, how does your child feel about their struggles, they say they've totally lost their confidence and they don't believe in themselves anymore. And I say to the parents, you have to address that while doing the program, because otherwise you're going to end up with a child with the skills who still doesn't believe in themselves. So you've got to address the mindset stuff too, while you're doing the therapies. And, if you can do things to help your child see themselves in a better light, to develop a positive self-image, everything goes smoother. My son had a friend who had a spinal tumor when he was 8 years old, and he'd had some brain damage from the chemotherapy. And this young man has become more successful than some of his peers, even though he had a profound learning disability, because he has a wonderful personality. He has a really positive outlook. He's a very hard worker. He has grit, and his positive story, his positive mindset has helped him really overcome a lot of challenges that he's had. So that story piece is incredibly important. And a negative story, a negative thought that hangs around for longer than is beneficial causes stress. And I'm going to come on to stress. So the final piece of the puzzle is state. So we have state, story, strategy, success. And state is the state of the physical body. And in particular, when we're talking about learning and things like that, the brain. And so the brain is an amazing organ. What a truly remarkable organ. AI is maybe just catching up with the brain's thinking capabilities, maybe. But, a human brain is capable of vast amounts of learning. It's capable of higher level thinking. It's capable of communication with people. It's truly amazing. But it has a massive design fault. And that design fault is that its state is fluctuating all the time. Mm-hmm. So unlike a computer, if you have a new computer, if you turn it on at 4 o'clock in the morning, at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, any time you turn it on, it's going to work the same. But the brain's not like that. It's a biological organ, and it's fluctuating. So you have times of the day when your brain is sleepy. You have times of the day when your brain is wide awake and able to focus and do good work. And then you have other times of the day when it's hungry and all it can think about is like, what am I going to eat next? Or it's thirsty. And so, we want to be optimizing our brain state as much as possible. And I'd love to share with you the top 5 things really quickly, because I know there's other things we want to talk about. Number 1 is diet. And diet needs to be designed for the individual. I have a really good friend who's allergic to kiwis. Like if they eat kiwis, they become really unwell. How weird is that? Like this health food that when I eat it, it makes me feel great. She has an allergic reaction and she has to go to bed for a day when she eats kiwi. So it has to be designed for that individual. Then we have exercise. Exercise is so important, not only for blood flow, but for neurochemicals, for hormones, all the good stuff that our brain needs. our brain really benefits from, getting regular exercise. And kids' bodies were designed to move a lot, and we force them to sit in a classroom for 6 hours a day and then wonder why they're struggling. They need to be moving. So then is stress management and emotional regulation. A stressed brain cannot do anything as well as a non-stressed brain. So teaching your child skills around that is super important. The next is social. Are they getting enough social interactions that are positive? And if they have negative social interactions, you're going to have to counteract that. And we all know that, often kids on the spectrum may be experiencing some negative things, either from other adults, teachers. I used to hear it so often that, teachers were being mean to kids and just saying horrible things and making them feel bad. Or it might be other children. And so, if your child's having some of those negative social interactions, you have to do things to counteract that and to lift them up. And then there's many, many things that affect brain health, but the final most important thing is sleep. Sleep is super important for brain health. When I trained as a doctor, I qualified 32 years ago now, believe it or not. Sleep was totally underestimated. We didn't know why it was important. And especially as junior doctors, we used to brag about not getting sleep. And we now know that's incredibly bad for your health as a parent and for your child as well. So that in a nutshell is the formula that I love to kind of give everybody, because it works for everything, no matter what you want to be successful at. If you keep that formula in mind, then it will give you a good roadmap to be successful.
Awesome. Wow. That was a lot to share. And I
hope
you took notes. I'm hoping everyone took notes, because that's really important information to know, because these things are so vital.
Yes.
Because without, like you said, without a brain that's functioning optimally, we've got issues. And thank you for bringing up diet, because a lot of people don't realize the connection between the gut and the brain, and how important, all of those things are: the diet, the movement, and, schools love them.
I know.
But yes, so many children are sitting all day. I remember being asked to observe a student in a kindergarten classroom, and, they're wondering why he's just doing all these things. He sat there was nothing going on physically for most of the day. They had recess. They got to school at 8 something, and they had recess at 2 something.
Oh my word.
And the only other time they got to walk was to the cafeteria.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Yeah. Children are not designed for that. They're meant to be climbing trees and exploring and moving around, chasing each other. And I used to see the same when I used to do school visits as well. I'd be like, a teacher would be like, why is this child playing with the other children's hair and shoes and things? It's like, because you're asking them to sit bored for 45 minutes on a carpet with nothing to do. Like, what do you expect them to do? And I actually used to look at the children who were sat quietly tolerating that and think there's something wrong with them to be able to, so it's so important. And I agree with you, unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't get that at all.
They don't. I mean, I couldn't sit that long. So, I was squirming in my chair, moving around, and, trying to find things to do. What can I focus on without sleeping? Because that would be really embarrassing, in the kindergarten class, and here I am dozing off because it's not stimulating. And however, and then we see a greater incidence of those in children with autistic children, because again, they're being asked to do something that is foreign to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. When I used to get I have ADHD, and when I used to get school reports, it used to say things like, Leonaura's work is excellent, but it's covered in doodles. And that was my kind of hyperactivity was in order to pay attention, I had to doodle because there wasn't enough mental stimulation going on. So yeah.
Yeah, same. I mean, I look back at it now. When I was in my 30s, my doctor mentioned something about ADHD, and then I realized so much of my past, like, because yeah, the doodling was a thing,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'd get it done,
Yes, absolutely.
but it
Yeah.
would just, yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be a mess sometimes. So I totally get it.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And it's just so how important is it? And you mentioned the diet and it being different for everyone.
Yes.
So how could parents find out exactly which diet will serve their children? I know I did a nutritional testing and my sister and I were totally different. It's like
Yes,
eat
yes.
raw vegetables. My sister eats them steamed and all these because our bodies metabolize them
Yeah.
differently. So how can parents, without paying a whole lot of money, figure out
Yeah.
what the best diet would be for their child because it's so important?
I know. And like you mentioned, the gold standard is going to have testing, to see a doctor, to maybe have allergy testing, and do all that stuff, and stool samples and all of that. But it's very expensive and it's not accessible for most people. So what I tell people is you need to become two things. Number one, a detective and a scientist. So the detective piece is you're going to look for clues as to what's going on. The body is sending clues. If you eat a food that is not good for your body, it is going to tell you. That might come out in pain. It might come out in green snot coming from your nose. It might come out in hyperactive behavior. I remember I used to run the parent teacher association at my boys' school when they were little. we had a disco, and this kid came up to me, and we had a candy store. This kid came up to me with pupils as big as saucers and said to me, "This is amazing. My mom doesn't let me have candy." And this kid had ADHD and he'd had candy with lots of sugar and food coloring, and he was literally bouncing off the walls. And so clearly his mum had been a detective and she'd figured that out, but she hadn't told us not to give it to her. So, the huge problem is sometimes the clues are really subtle. And so, so the experimenting piece is, if you suspect that a food isn't good for your child, do 2 or 3 weeks without it and then reintroduce it and see what happens. Then you will have that contrast of, the before and after. And for a lot of things, I know I think for milk, you only need like a week, whereas for gluten you might need 3 weeks to 3 months to know whether. And as I'm sure you are aware and your listeners are aware, gluten sensitivity is a huge problem today, and it's particularly a problem for children on the spectrum for some reason. And so it's we did 6 months without gluten for my son. I have never been more relieved that it didn't work, because it was a pain, cooking. He was already had restrictive eating, and to face the rest of his life without gluten was going to be tough. And so, and it was an extreme experiment to do. So unfortunately, it falls on you as a parent, as many things do, to be that detective and that experimenter. And if you find something that makes your child's behavior worse or causes them physical symptoms, then you need to coach your child around not eating those things going forward, or being really careful with them. Makes sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing I want to just touch on before our time, which is winding down so fast,
Yeah.
exercise in this day of screens,
Oh my
trying
goodness.
to get children moving, and because we understand the importance of it, what can we do?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think, hopefully schools are offering some movement during the day. It's really disappointing to hear when schools don't. And I think as parents, we can advocate for our children. We can kind of say, our child needs to move. Sometimes a classroom will put something in, like a fidget toy or one of those balance boards or something like that. Any movement is better than none. I think looking for opportunities to naturally fit exercise into the day. My kids walked to school for years. And so, it was funny, on the days when I drove them, they would say that they felt sluggish during the day. So we were like 5 minutes from school. It wasn't even a long walk. And here's another thing, movement outside, especially in the morning, because you're getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning is really important for brain health, and it's really important for sleep. Just another quick tip there. So, and say you have one kid who's doing sports and you're stuck with another kid, your other child is with you on the sidelines watching the sports. Walk around the field with them. So you might need to get creative and resourceful and find ways to fit it in, that you'll reap the benefits if you do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Leonaura. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. It has been very enlightening. Parents, I hope you've taken notes, and please practice. These are very simple strategies. I say simple, but it's not always, because we know sometimes the easiest things are the most difficult things, because you've got to change a few things in your schedule and just, the way that you do things. So, but try them out. That's why we're here, to give you those tips, because we know there are all these waiting lists for, to get help. And we just want to provide you with some tips in the meantime. Dr. Leonaura, how can people access your services?
So at my website, I have a funny spelling, which is up on the screen. So drleonaurarhodes.com is my website, and you can find everything that I do on there. And I love this work. So if anybody wants any help, please reach out.
Yes. And what you're doing sounds just very holistic. You're not just looking at one thing. Yes, it's brain health, but because our brains are connected to the rest of us,
yes,
it's really important to address so much more than just, not the brain in isolation. So yeah, so really important work. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. And thanks for all you're doing, Theresa, as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I get to talk to people like you, which is so much fun. And just, get to share with our families, to give them some hope, something to do, something to hold on to. Yes. So, and I just want to say thank you to our audience for watching or listening, and please reach out. Okay. You can also find us at Parenting on the Spectrum podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And see you here, same time next week. Thank you.